The snow fell in slow, delicate spirals outside the towering glass windows of Orion, corporate headquarters, the kind of snowfall that made Christmas lights blur softly and turned the city into something that looked peaceful. Even though inside the building a storm far colder was unfolding, as Chloe Martinez, 34, exhausted, heart-heavy, and carrying the last stack of documents she would ever handle for this company, walked toward the CEO's office knowing this was the end. Knowing HR's words still rang in her ears. Your department is being reduced. We're sorry. Today will be your last day. But she wasn't thinking about herself. She was thinking of the rent due next week, the empty refrigerator at home, and her 6-year-old daughter Lily, who still believed Christmas miracles were real, who still believed Mommy could fix anything. And she felt a tightness in her chest as she wiped her eyes quickly before entering the elevator because she did not want anyone to see her cry. Not today, not when she needed to be strong, even while her entire world was shaking apart. She stepped onto the top floor, her heels clicking quietly like fading hopes, because HR told her she needed the CEO's final signature to process her exit. And though she had never spoken more than 5 words to the man who practically ruled the city, she prayed silently that maybe, just maybe, he would reconsider, even though she knew hope was dangerous. But as she reached the giant mahogany door, she gasped softly because Lily, her bright-eyed daughter with messy curls and pink mittens, was standing right there, in the hallway, clutching her worn stuffed bunny and looking up with trembling lips. Mommy, I came because you forgot your lunch again. But why are you crying? And before Chloe could kneel down to gather her, the CEO's deep voice echoed from inside. If that's HR bringing more paperwork, come in. And in the next heartbeat, Lily pushed the heavy door open with both tiny hands, stepping inside the enormous office that smelled of pine wood and power, where Alexander Hale, the youngest CEO in the company's history, brilliant, intimidating, and so cold that people joked winter worked for him, looked up from his desk, surprised to see a child walking in instead of his assistant. Chloe rushed after her daughter, apologizing breathlessly, but before she could explain, Lily walked right up to the CEO, tugged the sleeve of his tailored suit, stood on her tiptoes, and whispered words that froze the entire world around them. Please don't fire Mommy. She tries so hard. And Christmas is coming. A whisper so innocent yet so heavy it shattered something deep inside. The man who everyone assumed didn't possess a heart at all. And the room fell painfully silent as Chloe's face flushed with embarrassment, mortification, and heartbreak all at once, stumbling over her words, trying to pull Lily back, apologizing for her daughter's intrusion, explaining she hadn't meant for her to come, that she didn't want pity or exceptions. But Alexander Hale didn't hear any of those words at first. All he heard was the small crack in the little girl's voice and the echo of a memory he spent years burying. Another Christmas, another little voice, another plea he could never forget. And for the first time in years, the man who ran billion-dollar empires felt his throat tighten, felt something thaw painfully in his chest as he studied the little girl's trembling hands, her innocent courage, and the single mother behind her who looked like she was breaking while still trying to smile. He leaned back slowly, his cold mask slipping, his voice softer than anyone in the company had ever heard as he said, Chloe, please sit. And she did. Confused, terrified, clutching Lily's hand, bracing herself for humiliation or dismissal. But instead, Alexander closed her termination file and said, before I sign anything, I want to know the truth. Why didn't anyone tell me you were struggling? A question that made Chloe blink because people like him didn't ask questions like that. Didn't care about employees' lives. But something in his eyes told her this moment was different, that something was shifting, that maybe Lily's whisper had awakened the faintest spark of humanity in him. And with a shaky breath, Chloe found herself telling the truth, not the professional, polished truth she always hid behind, but the real truth about working 70-hour weeks, about juggling daycare and late-night spreadsheets, about skipping meals so her daughter wouldn't, about living in fear of a single emergency ruining everything, about not having anyone in the world except Lily. And as she spoke, her words trembling like fragile ornaments, Alexander felt each sentence hit him with a weight he wasn't prepared for. He had seen desperation before, had crushed competitors, fired executives, ended careers without blinking. But this was different. Because this wasn't about numbers or budgets. This was about a child who walked in with nothing but love and fear in her eyes, and begged him, not for toys or treats, but for her mother's livelihood. And the sincerity of it shook him so deeply he had to look away. Moments later, he stood abruptly, walked to the window, his back to them, hands trembling almost imperceptibly, as memories from his, past clawed their way back, memories of his own mother crying in the kitchen because she had been fired days before Christmas. Memories of being too young to understand money but old enough to understand fear. Memories of making a Christmas wish he knew no one would hear. And as the snow outside thickened, he finally whispered, "I won't sign it." And Chloe gasped because she wasn't sure she heard him correctly. And Lily squeezed her hand, hope flooding her face. And Alexander turned around, his voice firmer now. "You're not being fired. Not today. Not ever without talking to me first. And starting tomorrow, your work schedule changes. No more impossible hours. No more suffering in silence. You deserve better, and your daughter deserves to see you smile." And Chloe, overwhelmed, covered her mouth as tears finally broke free. And Lily rushed into her arms, hugging her tightly, whispering, "Mommy, see? Christmas magic is real." And as Alexander watched them, something inside him, something hidden and lonely, broke open like dawn after a long winter, and he found himself smiling, the first genuine smile in years, completely unaware that this small act of kindness, this single moment, would change not only Chloe's life but his own in ways he never imagined. Because Christmas had always been cold for him, a season he shut out, but today, because of one brave little girl and 4 whispered words, a spark of warmth returned. And the story of that day would soon become a miracle far bigger than any of them could see. And as the scene fades, a narrator's voice rises, inviting the audience deeper into the unfolding journey.